justice, breaking barriers, and ensuring access to justice for rural women. So today we gather to explore a critical issue that lies at the heart of inclusive development. Gender-based disparities, particularly in rural settings, not only limit individual potential, but also undermine the collective progress of our society. Our discussion today will challenge us to rethink traditional responses to violence and inequality. While current strategies have largely relied on criminal justice measures, there is a pressing need for community-driven, holistic approaches that empower women through legal literacy, education, and targeted capacity building. This seminar aims to equip us with the insights and practical tools required to dismantle systemic obstacles that foster a more just and equitable society. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Advocate Audrey Dumello. As the director of Majlis Legal Center, Mumbai, Audrey brings over 18 years of experience related to laws related to violence against women and children, including the POCSO Act, the POSH Act, and the PWDV Act. Her work, spanning legal support, training of law enforcement, and judiciary on critical legislation, has made a huge impact on how gender justice is pursued in our communities. Audrey's unique blend of legal expertise and commitment to social change provides us with a rich perspective on the pathways to transforming access to justice for women. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to an engaging and productive session. Over to you, Audrey.
Thank you so much. I think when we had the discussion, Preeta, myself, and Shruti, and when they told me about this wonderful initiative, I was very excited to be here. And just to hear the work that you guys are doing on the ground, because I think what is really, really needed in this day and age is to ensure that all the learning that we have, all the strategies that we've helped evolve actually get grounded into policy making or at least implementation of what we already have. So really appreciative of all your work. And I understand you are in very different parts, both in terms of the different departments within the government, but also location-wise in different states. I hope English is comfortable language for communication, or if you feel like we should be speaking in any other language, please let me know. Yeah, okay. Great. So just as a brief introduction, probably I'll start with where Majlis started. So like I work with Majlis, and Majlis is an NGO that works on violence against women and children. And we are a really old organization in the terms that we are from the early feminist movement. I don't know how many of you were even born then. I think you are very young, under 30, but the early progressive feminist movement started in the 80s. It's not like we didn't have the women's movement before that. We've always had a women's movement. The Indian national movement did have a women's movement within it. All different unions would have a women wing. So the labor movement, the different rights movements would always have a component of women, very strong women who were part of that program. So why really was a need to have the women's movement? And I think that for us is a very critical understanding for young people to understand today. Because we've traversed such a long journey, right? 40 years, it's like 3 generations of people. And today, we're asking so many questions. Why do we want reservation for women? Why do we need special laws for women? What is all this equality and all of that? So it's important to go back and also recognize why, and then see where we are today. So I think I'd like to pause here and also tell you why this even thing came up. What was that turning point. And interestingly, it was a case. It was a case in Maharashtra. It's called the Mathura rape case. I don't know how many of you have heard it, uh, but you may have studied it when you were doing your master's, if you did in women's studies. But uh, the Mathura rape case is very interesting. Firstly, people think Mathura means it's, Bihar or UP, but actually it is Maharashtra. And Maharashtra is considered a very progressive state, like in terms of rights and access to justice. But this Mathura was the name of the girl. At that time, we could take names of rape victims. Today, that is not allowed anymore. But Mathura was a tribal girl, and she was 16 years old, and she had eloped with um, the person whose house she was working. And because she eloped, the family was concerned. They went to the police station. The police found Mathura, brought her back to the police station. And while they were recording her statement, two police constables raped Mathura in the toilet. And then Mathura walks out. A 16-year-old tribal girl walks out. And by that time, it's evening. So there's a lot of crowd gathered. And this young 16-year-old tribal girl actually tells the crowd and her family that she was raped. And what is most surprising for even somebody who works today, and I work on this issue very, very closely. What is shocking for me is that Mathura told that crowd she was raped, and the crowd believed her. For me, that's so difficult, because even today, when women tell anyone that they are raped, the first reaction is that of disbelief. Either it is blame, or it is, it didn't happen. He could never do that. But how can he do that? He's a young boy. He's an old man. He's a rich boy. He's a something. There's always an excuse of that why that person couldn't have raped you, or it's your fault. But here was a crowd that believed her, and it was also a crowd that threatened the police station that they would burn down the police station if a case was not recorded. That is the kind of support they provided. And thus came to be this case getting recorded of two police constables, a case recorded in their own police station. Even today, I can assure you, you all work in administration, to make a complaint about somebody in their same department, impossible, but this happens. Anyway, Mathura case, sessions court, trial, and session court judgment states acquittal. So they acquit these two constables, and there's evidence, right? Because she was raped there, the medical gets done there, so there's evidence. So what does the court say? The court says that Mathura consented to the rape, to the sex. So they say it's not rape, it's consensual sex, and Mathura consented to this. And Mathura is anyway a loose woman. She's tribal, and she's 16, and she ran away with this boy. So obviously she's habituated to sex, and she just had sex with those two police constables, and they acquit them. Thereafter, this case goes on appeal to High Court. And interestingly, High Court convicts the rapist. And High Court says that quiet consent, because she didn't fight, or because she didn't scream, or because she didn't have bruises on her body, doesn't mean you can take that as consent, because she was in a place of authority and she could not have fought back. So quiet consent cannot be taken as consent. And so they convict the accused, and the accused, of course, always as expected, goes on appeal to Supreme Court. And in Supreme Court, you would have thought the highest court in this land, what do they say? They acquit the rapist. And they say that the same things, they uphold the Sessions Court judgment and say exactly the same thing, that Mathura was of loose moral character and she had consensual sex with them. And this judgment created an uproar in the country, because it started with 3 law professors who read the judgment and took the initiative to write about it, and they wrote about it, and that really triggered a movement almost similar to the Nirbhaya, after the Nirbhaya case, it triggered that kind of fervor, where women from all cities were coming out and saying, it's our body, and we want an amendment in the rape law, and we need to be taken up, looked at as women in our issues. So women from all walks of life were coming on the streets and asking for reform, asking for change. And that's really the start of the women's movement. And we've come a long way, as you all know. 80s was the decade of lawmaking. We got unthinkable laws like, the PCB NDT Act, which talked about sex selection, and we got the Child Marriage Act amended. We got a new section in the criminal law, which was so rare at that time. Of course, now the criminal law itself has changed, but 1983 we got the section 498A. 498A talked about cruelty to wives, and it talked about domestic violence and criminalizing domestic violence. And at that time, I'm talking about the 80s, domestic violence was not even uttered as a topic. You couldn't be talking about domestic violence so openly. Today, of course, we've come a long way, and it's easier, relatively easier to even say the word domestic violence. So we got a lot of laws. And like I said, our founder, Flavia Agnes, was a victim of domestic violence. And she was part of the early women's movement by chance. And it gave her a lot of hope to come out of that situation, out of her domestic violence situation. And then she started the Women's Center. And I think it's a very interesting concept to understand. So the Women's Center was an idea that when women stand up against violence, invariably the family support gets withdrawn. Because an understanding that if you are opposing the family, if you are again going against the family, if you are, as they call it, washing dirty linen in public, then we don't support you. So not only does she not get support from her marital home, she also doesn't get support from her natal family, because together they believe that this is an exposure of something bad of their family which is going out. So they collectively don't support you. So Women's Center was meant to be a support where women would support each other and walk that very difficult journey together, right? Because without support, how do you move on in your life? Justice, legal justice is only one part of the whole process, right? Legal justice takes time. Legal justice is a very long journey, and it takes a lot of time because you have to fit into the structure of law, right? You have to prove your case, as is always said, because justice is blind and it hears both sides, and you have to prove your case to even get any relief. So what then happens to your life? Because the fact is you're facing domestic violence, you're facing abuse, and you still need support. So Women's Center was meant to be that, where, whether it's your job, whether it's your children's school, whether it is doing a vocational course, or whether it's just friendships and, support structures, Women's Center was supposed to be that. And the legal part was part of the process. So now that we've got these new laws, let's try and use them and see how they'll support us. And once they started using the legal framework of accessing justice, and these laws were pretty good, right? We had criminalization of domestic violence. We had a lot of personal laws which were giving us rights. Later on, we got maintenance laws, we got custody laws. So let's use them. But the moment they started using it, they realized that there's a big gap between law and the access to justice on the ground. Because law is after a little written text, right? It's a written text in a book, but how it gets actualized on the ground is very different, right? Courtrooms are patriarchal. Justice, in terms of the entire structure, is so scary and frightening and intimidating. And invariably, the lawyer who represents you is also male and comes from the same social bias. And so how do you articulate something which is called quote unquote rights, which was given to you now in these laws, but it does not get presented in that manner? Because that lawyer itself is looking at you in a way that how dare you have broken the family boundary or the family, name, and how dare you are asking for your rights. And suddenly he is also that same male who can identify with your husband or your accused rapist or your sexual abuser. He can identify with that because it's so set in the norms of how we practice. And so this person has to then represent you. And that's when Flavia did her law, and she started our organization, Majlis, to support victims of domestic violence and sexual violence in this legal journey, and developed a concept called feminist lawyering, which is really saying that um, it is her life and she needs support, both legal and otherwise. And she gets to decide how much, how far, and until what level, right? It's not your case, which is very male. I mean, if any of you have interacted with lawyers, you would be familiar with what I'm saying. They're typically male, older men. They look a certain kind, and they tell you what you need to do, like what you should be doing, and you don't even have the guts to ask a question. So you just like you come out of that room and you don't know what is happening. So feminist lawyering was about explaining to her, giving her options, and letting her decide what is the course that she would want to take, and then providing that support. But at any point she wants to withdraw, at any point she wants to go back to that situation, it's not about being judgmental, it's about being supportive through that journey. Because all of you know that domestic violence victims leave home, the statistics in the West is that they leave home 13 times before and go back before they actually leave. And India, it's far more, right? Because there's so much of pressure of maintaining the family and saving the family. So going back is literally the norm across. Everyone you meet will tell you how you have to save the marriage, how everything lies in the marriage. And if you go out, what is going to happen to you? You will be nothing. You will be destroyed. You will be, you will face so much other abuse. This is a better option, is what you will be told time and again. So uh, that is how we started, and that's the work that we do. For 35 years we've continued to only work on the issue of domestic violence and rape, so sexual violence, sexual harassment at workplace, that whole, and family law, domestic violence. That's what we do. We are a team of women lawyers. But while we are doing this case work, we are also trying very hard to put this learning back into the implementation of this law. So we see, because we're walking this journey with them, we see the state very closely in how it responds to women, right? Meeting the state when you're at a meeting and a conference is very different from interacting with the state as a victim or a survivor. And we see that very closely. So we watch how, if she goes to a one-stop center, what is she told? What does she have to face? What are the what is told to her so that she does not use those facilities? Because if she uses those facilities, it's work for the people who's sitting there, right? Or if she goes to the police station, what a police officer will tell her, because one, he's patriarchal and believes that he's saving her by telling her not to file a case, and two is because if he files a case, then again it's so much work to be done, and she's not going to follow up because he knows that the family will pull her back. So why waste my time? So we watch this in action. We watch this whole engagement in action, right through police, through the hospitals where medical care is supposed to be provided. How she is looked at as a rape victim and almost judged because she is raped, and then how that treatment is even provided. So young girls who are pregnant because they engaged in a sexual activity or they were raped, how they are viewed and how they are treated and how they are commented on. Like, even though the law will mention consensual, medical treatment, sorry, medical examination, how that consent is even asked. So we watch this very closely, again in courtrooms, how prosecution is supposed to defend the case, how much they are present, how they defend the case, how interested they are, what is the judge doing, what is the defense doing. So using that entire gamut of learning, we take that back to talk to the state about what needs to change. Right? And we found that work very powerful, because once you do that and you kind of are able to see it from both angles, why a stakeholder is not responding, and what is the law and what is the gap in implementing the law. And when you have those kind of discussions with the state, there is hope of change, right? I'll give you an example. We work with victims of rape, and there was a practice where in a test identification parade, the rape victim had to touch the accused to identify that this is the person who has committed rape on me. Now, I don't know if you can imagine what it feels for a victim to do that. It's quite traumatic, and we had to, watch it happen to our clients. And we were like, why do they need to touch them? They said, no, that's the law. That's our practice. You have to do it. Nobody is ready to ask. Then we understood, because we're also lawyers, we understood that the touching was, there could be no discrepancy on who she was pointing at. Right? You're touching, because later defense cannot say वो ऐसे point किए तो वहां पे गया उसका indication. So to avoid the discrepancy in trial, you're making her go through this. And even though technology is advanced, is like, the law is saying use one screen, don't let her see the accused, all of that, you're making her still do this. So we went right up, talked to the judiciary, talked to the administration. We're like, what to do? And from that problem statement, we were able to change this in the books. We were able to change this we had to change this in the jail manual. To understand where this had to be changed also took so much of effort, because the judges are saying, yes, 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 it shouldn't happen, but we are not making it happen. And then the police is saying, yes, it shouldn't happen, but it's not in our hands because that happens in the jail. So, identifying where the problem was, going down there, then working with that agency, convincing them, and then, getting everyone on board to be able to make that change. Um, Several other changes, pioneering changes. For example, victims would be taken to one kind of hospital where the police had control over that hospital, so that the doctors will come to court for the trial, right? Because they had control over that hospital and that doctors. Whereas a victim had to travel 1.5 hours to reach that hospital, and nobody cared, right? But what was the gap? The gap was, the police was saying, when we go to the public hospitals locally, they don't cooperate with the investigation, they don't give us the forensic, they don't treat us properly. We are police, and then they just shunt us around. So we needed to deal with this issue from all sides. So first, understanding the problem both from the police end and the victim, and then finding solutions and bringing people on board. And those are some of the things I feel that this very close working with victims have helped us identify and then bring those as changes. And you all know that it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not one kind of way where you just, make a change. Every change that you bring, unless you're, corresponding it with training, when you're going back on the ground and seeing if the change is implemented, and then going back and telling them, no, but it's still not, this is the gap. Unless that to and fro is constantly happening, you cannot actually ensure or enforce a change. So that's some of the work that we do. I want to, because I want to talk more about what is it when we say gender justice. We use this word very commonly now, and we say, yeah, we have gender justice, we have equality. Our constitution gives us equality, we are all equal. And now, so currently I hear that now women there is no domestic violence. These are all false cases. Or women are equal, women are earning, women are working, so there is no domestic violence. And it feels so connected to reality that you question, where is this coming from? Where is this idea is coming from? Because that there is no domestic violence, they said in the 80s also. Ye ghar ka hai, ye normal hai. What is the problem? So I want to, just bring in this whole idea of, firstly, what is violence? Violence is an intention. It's an intention to teach somebody a lesson. It is an intention to make somebody pay a price for the fact that they went beyond what they should have. They crossed the boundary. They need to be put in place, right? Because accidentally, you can hit somebody. You can hurt somebody accidentally, right? But that's not violence. And then you may not hurt somebody. You may want to cause violence, but you may not actually hit them. But that is violence because it's an intention to hurt them, and to hurt them in order to put them in their place so that they do not that they dared cross the boundary and they need to be taught a lesson. That is violence. We do it on children, we do it on women. And who commits violence? That's also a very important understanding, right? There's a lot of things like he has a temper, he's angry. But the same angry man, so to say, is not committing violence on his boss, not committing violence on people on the road, and he's selectively coming home and beating his wife or his children, right? So who can commit violence, right? Can a lower caste man commit violence on an upper caste man? But an upper caste man can commit violence. So it is so ingrained in our social structure or our patriarchy as to who can commit. So a mother can commit violence on her children, but not on her husband. And that's how it works across. So understanding this, what is violence and who can commit violence, is so important when you look at this issue. The other thing is that you would have commonly heard this sentence called the personal is the political, right? It's a feminist statement. And what does it mean? I think feminism has been able, if it has been able to teach us one thing, it's that, right? Because patriarchy will have you believe that this is personal and this is the political. And what is personal has to stay inside, and then there is the public. And feminism told us that for a woman, it is a continuum. You're facing the violence at home, but firstly, what is home? Because home is an extension of so many things, and we're accessing so many spaces within the so-called personal. And then what is political or what is public is so transition. And this whole idea that you have to keep the personal quiet, and she didn't, so nobody should know about what is happening. This is ghar ki baat hai, kisi ko pata nahi hona chahiye. And that pressure that is built on women of having to keep the personal quiet, and that is the family honor, and putting it all on her body while she is facing this kind of violence, because putting it out there would mean family honor being disrespected. And look at that pressure on women, right? But at another level, the structures that we engage with are also operating on women, on women's bodies or on women's lives to feed the person. So, for example, let's say the belief that, so like again, gender is not it's a social construct, right? It's something that we will say that you are man, you are woman, this is how you have to quote unquote behave, act, dress, talk, be. And yet when if you are in a public space and you are being violated, the structure of your dress itself does not allow you to be able to deal with that situation. Or the fact that how you have been told that you have to be quiet, you have to be soft, you cannot be strong, you cannot be loud. But in an oppressive situation, whether it's a domestic violence or it's a rape or it's, you're suddenly supposed to transform, which you have not been taught that language. You don't know how it even uh, works. You've never been trained of how to respond. But there you are, if I have to connect it to an institution like court, you are asked, why did you keep quiet about the violence? Why did you not say anything? Because a response to violence is only looked at in the space of how any normal person would respond, without taking into consideration what happens to you because of this gender role that is put in you, or this pressure that is put on you on how you should be acting, behaving, or responding. And uh that places women at such a they are, same thing in marriage. For example, you are raised in a certain way of how you should be, how a good girl is supposed to be. And then when you get married, you are supposed to again meet those requirements. But when you face violence and you don't do anything about it, then you are questioned by the same state agencies as to why didn't you do anything? Right? So where's the proof? How are you going to prove this? What are you going to, you have come after so long, or you were dressed in a particular way, when that has been the pressure put on you. And I think unless we understand these constructs of how we are meant to be and then how we are expected to behave in certain situation is contradicting, because that is where we have to constantly prove that no, this is not something that I can do. Because for most women who come to us, right, what they tell us is that I suffered for so long, right, I listened to everyone, and now finally at the end of it, he has thrown me out of the home, and he has just not been providing any money for my children, and now I want justice. And how do you tell her that the court structures are only going to provide you justice because based on what evidence you have? And she says, no, but I didn't go to any police station. I never went to a hospital. I never took medical care. Or when I went to the hospital and I had tried to commit suicide, but at the hospital, I told them that no, this was, I fell down, or I accidentally drank poison, or I was burnt. But now to prove at the end, when she does decide to take action, she has nothing on her side. And then the question is, so it must have not happened. So you're lying. So you're, now you've made it up to be able to get back at him because he did this. So these are the ways that it keeps coming back. And then I think the third wheel of this whole angle is intersectionality, right? I think we need to bring that in terms of when we say, oh, there's no domestic violence, then which category of women are you looking at, and in what context are you looking at this? Because Hindu women in a particular class, from a particular background, how they will experience it will be very different if you are a minority woman, if you're a Muslim woman from a particular region. So unless we look at this intersectionality of caste and religion and class, we will be falling short of creating any structure, any resources for them to access. Because while all women are equal, and that slogan has worked, the truth is we are not. And if it becomes about how these same structures will respond to you. And sometimes even as we make demands, like depending on where I come from, my problem becomes everyone's problem, and then I make those demands without understanding the nuances of this, and then you will have to take, so it's not only women, right? The intersectionality works in ways that if you're Muslim and the state is against your community, and you are facing domestic violence and you want to complain about this domestic violence, then you have to go to the very state who is against your community. And how will you access that? Why? What will give you that confidence? Because then firstly your community will, you'll face a backlash from your community that, see, you went and now they're backlashing our community. And then um she herself will have to carry that burden of her community. But when she has to complain about domestic violence, no one will come forward, because then everyone will support each other to say that, this is normal, you should be able to take it. So she cannot complain to her community, but she cannot also go outside and complain to the state. Whereas a Hindu woman will find it more accessible, because she has more access in terms of being able to make those choices. And I think intersectionality is so important, to bring in every scheme, in every policy that we make, of how women are not one category, and how they access this, whether it's medical health, whether it is, I talked about the one stop center, whether it's accessing schemes. We keep creating schemes for women to access, and then who accesses them, right? I'll give you an example of shelter homes, right? Everyone talks about, oh, if a woman is facing violence, then she can leave and she can live in the shelter homes. Sounds great. State is making shelter homes, you should go and stay there. But have anyone, I mean, you all work in administration, so you should know, have you seen a shelter home? Who is a shelter home made for? Shelter homes look like jails. They control women equal or more than family does, because now they are responsible for somebody else's, woman. So it's like a jail. It's curtailed. It is controlling, where they cannot even leave the place, or they have to wear uniform. They cannot use mobile. That is one part. Two is, they forget that you are a person with an identity, and you have religious practices and food preferences, and you have, you, just because you're facing violence doesn't mean it stops you from being a person. So if you were, let's say, had to pray 5 times a day, or if you had to eat a certain kind of food, or, how do you then live in that shelter home? And then if you don't live in the shelter home, they will say, too bad. Then you are choosing to be in that violent situation, so you go. So how do you make these choices? And so looking at it from, firstly, not all women are equal. And then what is it that we need to create to make access, make it accessible? We'll have to bring in intersectionality. Today you have trans women, you have, with women with different sexual identities. How are we creating those spaces to fit in and make it accessible to them? I think I'll stop here, and maybe we can look at some questions and look at how we can engage with what you are dealing with in terms of your issues, and how you can bring this into your work. Yes, Nupur, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. Good evening. Thank you for such insightful and sharing. So, while you were sharing the case of the Mathura victim, I just recalled what happened quite a few days ago about the Allahabad High Court's statement on, which said that grabbing breast and like pulling off the pants did not contribute to the rape things. So whenever we come across such news and articles, so it not only reflects the insensitivity, but as a gender practitioner, it kind of makes me feel very sad, because it is not coming from someone who's ordinary. It is coming from a judge's point of view. So in this case, like, what can we do to influence the key stakeholders, so that such kind of statements are not made, and they take care of the victims and handle the cases sensitively.
I know it was a very, very disturbing judgment. Uh, and what the judgment did was they tried to technically differentiate between attempt to rape, and they tried to say that for attempt you have to be it has to go beyond just an action. It has to be attempt should involve some kind of uh, action towards the idea of rape. uh, I think I don't know if you read similarly just yesterday or the day before. It talked about 75% of judges uh, hired since 2018 are upper caste, right? In this case, it was a tribal family. Both family members were tribal. And I mean, here again, to understand, um, and I want to bring in something here, right? Which is, while, you know, men will have issues with each other about caste, community, class, and all of this, when it comes to be against women, right? There's a strange camaraderie. And that camaraderie comes from the fact that we need to support each other. Otherwise, women may go out of hand. You'll notice this even in domestic violence cases where neighbors will be fighting each other and they will not be agreeing on, kahan rasta hona chahiye and what practice should happen. But when it is about suppressing a domestic violence victim or an offense that has happened, they will support each other so that the issue does not come out. And I think this judgment really is speaking in such a how do I put it? It's what he was trying to do is just justify that you will have to cross that boundary because I am going to only look at it as a legal issue, and technically I'm in the right, and technically you may be in the right. Right? Does pulling a string off a pajama can it? So technically, yes, it cannot, because there was no action beyond that, which was closer, because then they look at intention, they look at so many things. But can you really look at it like that? This is a 16-year-old girl, and look at the situation where how they were traveling, and how, when somebody intervened, what was that response to that person? Can't you look at it in this entire context? But somehow, when it comes to this issue, there is a camaraderie, and we will have to acknowledge that. It's like our friend saying, right? But not all men, but maybe she would have done something, and how we are having to justify and fight that justification of how they need to, almost to explain to them, even our friends, our very close friends or family, to constantly explain to them that how they need to look at this issue.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering that.
Guys, anybody else? You can share your reflections, experiences from the ground. That these are learning spaces. I'm sure ma'am would be very happy to learn from you, and then, vice versa as well. So please share any experiences, any things that you have seen, any questions that you had at the moment, and yeah, this is your space.
Yes, Amit, please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Uh, so far we were discussing that what are the structural settings that are like encouraging the violence or the gender injustice. So continuously, I'm getting a sense that yes, things are good and a lot of work is required to be done. So, like there is a structural violence against women or the marginalized genders. So when like we as fellows are working in different government offices, so we are part of that system that might be inherently unjust for women. So how to approach, like I just wanted to understand that within our capacity as a fellow and not as a formal part of the system, but still working into that system, how should we uh, uh, like plan our actions towards in our limited capacity?
Right, right. I think you are beautifully placed, very powerfully placed, because um, you get to work very closely with the system. You get to see the system at play, but you are also a sensitized person in that place to be able to look at it from different contexts. And I'm sure this program is offering you so much of understanding about this issue, about access, about making spaces available for all marginalized groups, across caste, across gender. I feel like, I think when we look at implementing, whether creating new, but more often implementing, um, to always bring in the gender lens. And I think because when we talk education, right? And unless you bring the gender lens in education, you will never plan for periods, or you will never plan for fears that family have in sending their daughters out. You will never plan for that. You will think technically, okay, children have to be in school, and so let's provide teachers, and then when you bring in the gender lens into that understanding, immediately it will change the way you will create that resource, right? You will start thinking about it as to how families fear sending their daughters out because they are concerned about two things, and both things are important. One is their concern that their daughters will be raped or sexually abused on the way or in school. But two, they're also concerned that their daughters, if they get too much education, they will speak too much, be very forceful, or run away with somebody. And these both things are at play. So when you have to convince parents that they need to send daughters to school, you will have to take care of both these issues, right? And the third part is that girls are, so like again, now I'm talking about personal and then structural. So you have already conditioned young girls in rural areas that unpaid care work is their responsibility. And they have to be doing that. So if they have to go to school, then it has to be above and beyond that. It has to be, they have to finish that work and then only they can access or go to school. And if anything falls apart, if the family goes into poverty, if any member of the family dies, if the mother is not well, if anything changes, she will be the first person to drop out. So if you don't bring that lens into getting children into school, you will have only boys in school. But naturally, and 10 years later, we will realize that, oh, there are only boys in school. Now what do we do? And that's constantly happening with most schemes, right? It is looking at it with a very, it is looking at it with a marginalized access, but it is not bringing the gender lens in enough with its intersectionality. So even when we bring the gender lens, then we'll bring it for a particular class or for a particular caste. and then leave out everyone else. So I would say, think like a woman. Play, uh, recently we had this thing in our office and we were like, for Women's Day, what do you want? Like, what do you want to ask male members? And somebody said she wanted to tell the male members that for 24 hours, for a full 24 hours, you should do everything that a woman does. And you should also get periods. And then, you should be able to experience what we go through from morning to night, just to be able to understand who we are. So I think for you also, I would say the same things, that can we think from the lowest minimum, whoever we are making anything for, and think how will this help them, or how will they be able to use this?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for clarifying this, ma'am. There's one more thing that in any such situation or case, the one thing that comes as culprit is the mindset of patriarchy that we have discussed so far multiple times. So now, to tackle this patriarchal mindset, there are structural mechanisms, there are policy, rules, regulations, all are have been in place since time along, but still issues are there. So, like, this is a kind of behavioral change to change the mindset of a large population. And so, do you like? I just wanted to get your views that how the structural measures or policy changes are catering to that, like resolving that patriarchal mindset in a positive way. And if not, then where it is lagging, because policies have been there, rules are being made, there have been like voices are being raised, but still the issue is there. There is like no proportionate positive outcome on that front. So where is the lag, and how should we understand this whole scenario with all its dynamism?
Right, right. So firstly, I would really like to say that for all the efforts people like you and so many like us have done over the years, that change is coming, and it never comes as a revolution. It always, sometimes changes come slowly and subtly, right? Um, it's not good enough. It should happen faster. But, I think um, when we are talking about this now, what I also realize is that, today everyone says it's the decade of women. Everyone's concentrating on women. The government is concentrated. I mean, governments are coming into power by bringing about schemes for women. Like Maharashtra won elections because they had the Ladli Bahin scheme, or at a national level, talking about giving gas cylinders to women. Just like it's all coming in the name of women. So that's the first step, right, to acknowledge it. Thank God, like, okay, finally they said, okay, women are an important force to be thinking about, right? Economically also, there is a realization that we need more women in the workplace. So let's do everything we can to bring them in a workplace, right? So these are positive changes. And from there, then the cascading effect will happen. What we as administrators or as supporters of administrators have to be conscious is to be able to help them look at everything with the lens of power and control. Unless we are breaking it up. So, at one time, the women's movement was all about activism. Like, let's go out, let's bring law change, let's like do morcha, let's do dharna, right? Today, it's all about very individual work. So, like a Majlis will work with victims of domestic violence and rape, and then so it's a lot of this individual, immediate intervention work that people are doing, right? I feel like we need to do it at all levels, and we cannot let go even one of these spaces, because there is the immediate intervention to help that victim immediately, and we need interventions at that level. But we can never forget the midterm interventions. For example, things like what TRIF is doing to create the what are they called, where the women are become a support structure, or create some community efforts where when the woman is facing this, the community plays a part to support her. So working at the midterm level, mid-level of creating community support structures and helping them intervene and at the level of the community, And then at the broader level, never giving up that of the long term, constantly engaging with what is the problem. And like you rightly said, patriarchy continues to dominate us. I mean, we are pushing, but it is, and it's affecting men and women equally across board. The patriarchy does not only hamper women, right? It plays out, we're all playing a part in it. The moment we are being in control, we are also playing a part of it. So at every level, everyone will have to recognize power and control and then keep questioning it. And that is what the women's movement has taught us. Feminism has taught us to ask why. You know, for the longest time, we were told that family is the only institution. We're still told that. Family nahi hai to you're finished. Without family, what can you do? And we believe that each of us, women sitting in this room, forget outside and forget women facing domestic. I'm saying each of us believe that. But feminism taught us to say, if family is violent, then, you know, if family was meant to be the safe space and it is not the safe space, then I can have another family. I can create another family. And we have to question it at that level constantly.
Yes. Thanks. Thanks, man.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, Audrey. It was very nice listening to your thoughts, and I was like resisting to speak because I thought it'll sound like a rant. Because, like you said, courtrooms are very patriarchal. I feel the whole government system, the way it functions, is very patriarchal as well. And you know, every day, like individually also, like I also am very surprised at certain things that I myself face, having been positioned, you know, in the district. And I am placed in Sukma in Chhattisgarh, which is a tribal dominated district. So it's very unique in different ways because women are like, you know, at the forefront in many ways, like also. But what I wanted to specifically ask you are a few things. One was something around POXO, which is about, you know, when there are cases of consensual sex, you know, amongst people who are under 18. And because there is a strong push by the government to register FIRs, and you know, there were some sort of sessions where they were talking about child marriage, and then there was discussion around this, like some teachers, because there are a lot of hostels in Sukma, had brought this up. So what are the different ways in which this can be dealt with? And like I was suggesting, like sex education, like very massive awareness around sex education, but what are the other ways in which this can be dealt? Because legally, one has to register an FIR. So this is one. The other one was around the hospital, because I do like I have interacted with a few doctors who have gone for these gender-based violence workshops in the state, and they have come back. But what we were, so nothing, basically nothing really happened after that. But we were planning, like we were planning to do like a sensitization workshop in collaboration with one-stop centers like WCD and the hospital staff, to sensitize them. But other than that, what are the other ways that we can support people? Yeah.
Yes. A little bit about POXO. It is a new law. It came in 2012. And while it is an absolutely wonderful law on child sexual offenses, and procedurally it has everything good about it, because at every level it's very protective of the child while they're going through this very difficult legal journey. But it did bring in mandatory reporting. There was one very, very controversial clause that any person, you, me, mother, neighbor, hospital, call, anybody who knows about child sexual offense is mandated to report. If you don't report, that's a crime. That itself is a crime. That's one thing it did. And two is, it took age of consent from 16 to 18. Earlier, consent was age 16. At age 16, I could consent to have a relationship with any person. They said no, 18. Thereafter, of course, 2013, the criminal law also got amended and age of consent moved to 18. The fact that age of consent is 18 itself is patriarchal, right? What it's saying? It's saying that as a girl, you should not be engaging in any sexual activity till 18. And then age of marriage is 18. So it fits beautifully. And that's why it got passed in parliament, right? And now 10 years later, we're all suffering this legal issue. But I have to say something else on this issue, which is consensual sex now is a little tricky, because if you have to study, and I only do that work, so I study that a lot. Who are the cases that are getting reported? And the cases that are getting reported are, and you come from Chhattisgarh, right? You know the level of child marriage in Chhattisgarh, right? So there is the families are, when the families are in sync, then they're happy to get their children married at child marriage. I mean, the girls. 13 million girls in this country are married below 13. That's the number. And how does that happen? Everyone is hand in glove. Not one single child marriage case is registered because everyone is hand in glove, no problem. So why do you think these POXO cases are getting registered? If two people consenting, having sex, why are they coming out? Nobody should know. If nobody knows child marriage, dhoom dham ke tum marriage kar rahe ho. Here why are these cases coming out? So who are these cases? Right? Again, intersectionality. If you're consenting and you're engaged in whatever activity, it never will come out because you have class, caste to be able to cover it up. Right? The cases that are coming out are typically two kinds. One is the girls are pregnant. Girls are pregnant, go to hospital, because firstly, when you're a young girl and with you're built very small, discovering pregnancy gets delayed. Firstly, she's scared. She doesn't know she's pregnant. She doesn't know what she's engaged with. Then she gets pregnant, and then she doesn't tell anyone because she doesn't know how to say it. She does very, very scary things. He will give her some pills to take, and she'll try that, and that will fail. And then when it becomes 6 months, 7 months, then it'll come out because mother will ask, or she gets pain in her stomach, goes to hospital, pregnancy is discovered, POXO is registered. This is one type of cases. This I can give you guarantee will be a good 50-60% of why these cases come up. Right? And so many issues involved around that. So many issues are involved, because the moment a case comes out, because she went to a public hospital, the case came out. If she went to a private hospital, it would be all covered up. So again, class. And when these cases come out, the families get completely destroyed, because now it is two people. Maybe he's also from the community. God knows how older he is, what is his standing, so don't even ask. But for her life is completely gone. Because now everyone knows, everyone is talking. She cannot access school. She's pulled out of school. She's gotten married because they don't want her to be in that area. So it actually pulls that whole family down so much. Right? How are we going to deal with this issue? But the second type of cases that are coming out is when the girls run away. A lot of the cases, if you study them, the other half of the cases, the girl runs away. And nobody is asking the question, why are girls running away? We all have daughters. All our daughters are probably engaged in some sexual activity, which we may or may not know. Why are these girls running away? Nobody, everyone is saying they're running away, and they call them Romeo Juliet cases. Nobody's asking what age is this Romeo? He must be 10 years, 15 years older than her. He must be a married man. God knows what he has promised her, and she's running away. But my question is, why is she running away? Do you know why she's running away? She's running away from the abuse in her natal family. She's being abused. She's being beaten. She's being discriminated she is being probably sexually abused, and she is finding hope in this person who may or may not give her that thing, whatever he's promising. He may abuse her more, but she wants to escape this. And that for me is very, very crucial to look into. That why are these girls running away? And I think if you have to intervene, maybe the first thing to look at is what is this number of girls who ran away, and then look at these homes to see what we need to do. Because sex education, what will sex education do? It will teach you how to have safer sex. Great. But how will you look at abuse inside homes, especially natal family homes, which goes completely covered? Nobody supports her. If she complains about it to anybody, everyone will say, ये आपके माँ बाप है, उनका हक है आपको मारना, आपको यही रहना है. And we know how girls are discriminated. We know how they're given complete responsibility of housework in rural areas. It is so much harder. Their lives are so much harder. And then when they run away, then these cases come about. So it's a very complicated issue. And I don't know whether sex education definitely is one area of teaching them, because they don't know their bodies. With so many young girls telling me that दीदी उन्होंने बोला कि आप ये नहीं करोगे मतलब आप प्यार नहीं करते हो मुझसे, and all of this kind of forcing her. But she also believes that once she is told that मैंने बोला ना कि मैं प्यार, if I said I love you means now I have to give you my entire self. This whole notions that women, girls are being taught. And then once that manipulation starts, rightly so, what Akshak was saying, that then then there is also this whole issue of so it's so complicated, right? At one level there's the manipulation, at another level she believes that now I've given him my body, now I have to get married to him, because that is what is taught to me, that my virginity is only for one person, so I have to. And we need to break this issue down at so many levels. Sex education would just be the tip of the iceberg. And you know what was most shocking to me? We're desperately trying to delay girls from having late pregnancies, right? And these cases of these missing girls, when they elope supposedly with this man, he's invariably a man, by the way. Invariably, very few aisa, they're both young. He's very older, he's probably married, has children, and he's promised her this life. And what is dangerous is they know POXO, because now POXO has become quite well known. Everyone knows about child sexual offense or case lag jayegi. So then she's advised to get pregnant soon. So अगर आपका pregnancy हो गया और फिर आप बोलोगे कि I'm in love with this person, then वो case नहीं होगा. So it's actually, we're going around back circle of bringing pregnancy coming at a lower age. So yeah, very complicated. We have to work with schools, we have to work with families. We have to understand sexual agency of young girls. I don't think any of us are ready to even engage with that conversation, that young girls can be sexually active and that's okay. And they can be taught that because they're sexually active, they don't have to be, completely submissing to this person, and that this is the ultimate. How do we make all these differentiations? How do we teach? We have to believe that first. Otherwise, we are putting it under the cloak of, good girl, bad girl.
I would like to. Oh, so sorry. Arkaja, please go ahead.
No, I just had asked another question about how to other than sensitization in hospitals when of the staff and sort of like directing them to one-stop centers, and like you had shared that there are deep problems with the system of one-stop centers as well. What are the other things?
So yeah, sorry we lost you. Your voice was breaking, but I get you what you were saying. So I want to talk about one-stop centers. Is there anyone working with one-stop centers or working with these departments? You can just raise your hand, because I feel like one-stop centers came with a very big dream. I mean, I was part of the drafting of the one-stop centers at various times, and the belief was that it will be exactly what it's saying, a one-stop. Right, that was the name. Believing that a victim will come to a center and immediately medical treatment will be given. Immediately, if a police case has to be filed, that will be done. If she needs like temporary shelter, she will have a place to just stay there, and then legal help will be provided. It was truly meant to be one stop for support. You know what they've become? There are 900 now in the country, and they become counseling centers. The maximum job, please do a study and understand, if you have any power within it, ask them, how many cases have you managed to file a criminal case or file a civil case for a domestic violence victim? And in how many cases you're only doing counseling? What is counseling? They're calling the husband, they're trying to do samjhauta, and they're sending her back. And that is what it's been reduced to. And everyone is supporting this initiative. Everyone is saying, yes, that is what is required. Call the husband, explain to him, do samjhauta, tell him nahi maro mat. Jaise ki overnight jisne mara lifelong, wo suddenly change hoga. And then go back and they'll say 100% success. Nahi, she's very happy now. I would say to the question about gender sensitization, very much needed. Has been happening for 40 years. I don't know what headway we are making with that. I have stopped doing any gender sensitization. किसको घर में चाय बनाना चाहिए, नहीं बनाना चाहिए, ये वो, I have just stopped doing it. I do two things, and I think maybe you can try them. One is I do role specific training, right? In a hospital, from the ayabayas to the nurses to they have certain functions, that the role that they have to do when it comes to dealing with women, right? Whether it is how they speak to women, whether it's protocols that they have to follow, we need to educate them about what is the law saying. Like the law says, you need to take consent of the victim before doing a medical examination. How do you do this consent? This is role specific training of people who are doing that role is what you should identify. Because teaching everyone everything is too much of a waste of time and doesn't serve the purpose. So one, do role specific training, but more importantly, put accountability measures. Training without accountability and monitoring is, according to me, behta hua aisa, they're just going down the drain. We're training, they're changing, and then that staff is gone, and then somebody new, and then again we're training. We have to train, and we have to put in accountability measures. We have to monitor those who we have trained and to see how they are changed in that with after the training. I think accountability, this government has to learn so desperately. Because even you and me, right? If Praxis, Shruti and Preeta did not force you all to come here, you would have probably had better things to do. And they are your accountability to say, no, you have to attend this. It's a mandatory. You have to be here at 7:30. And then we are being here, and if they were not here, you would have said, chalo, I'm going. I'll just do my check-in and leave. We're all trying to avoid work. And that's us, naturally. So then, unless you have these accountability measures that at the end of the session, we're putting in some mechanism, 3 months down the line, we're going to see how this transitioned into that. And those That works beautifully. That works amazingly. I'll tell you what works at Majlis. I have found one absolutely wonderful tool. I write complaint letters. I told you how I go to the police station, I'm going to the hospital, I'm seeing the way they're talking to them, and I come back. Like our whole team, we're 30 of us, we're all we call complaint boxes. Very bad word. They thought, as young people, don't be a complainer box, but we do exactly that. We come back and we write. And we don't write to the media. We're not interested in all of that. Like, okay, media will cover it. We write to that stakeholder. We write right to the top. Right? So, for example, today only we wrote a letter about a police officer who has beaten one of our victims at the police station. Right? So basically, she had quote unquote eloped, but nothing like that. He had literally drugged her and taken her, kept her in control for 3 or 4 days. At the end of 3 or 4 days, she comes back home. Meanwhile, her mother had put a missing complaint. So mother went back with her to the police station to say that she's back. Then, as protocol required, they sent her for a medical, and it was that she mentioned what all he had done. They refused to believe her. They said, you're trying to uh, uh, blame one innocent boy, and you're just just making up a story because you just went to have a good time. And then she happened to have some video on her phone when he grabbed her phone or something. They saw that, right? And then they were mildly believing her. And so they kept her in the police station all night. You all know you're not supposed to keep a woman in the police. They kept her in the police station. She's a 16-year-old girl. And the next morning, they call the accused and they do amna samna of the accused. There's a big thing happening at the police station. And then finally, the FIR was recorded. Now, this case comes to me and she told me this whole story. So we wrote a long letter. We gave details of every officer's name. And we said, this happened, 6:30 p.m., Mr. So-and-so, this is what they did. And we wrote to commissioner. So we start on the top and everyone, and we'll give that police station also the letter. And now you deal with it. And that's when they'll come and they'll say, madam, why did you have to complain? You should have told me. I'm senior PI. I would have dealt with it. Till then, they're not ready to listen to anything. Right? So this accountability measure works better than any training. Because once that one officer is pulled up, the whole police station will know that don't do this. Don't keep a woman at night. Don't beat her. Don't, then you'll be in trouble. So hospitals, yes, training, of course. And then put accountability measures of how you're going to monitor the training. Don't leave the training by itself will not have its effect.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Ma'am, I have one question, and it's more related to your experience. Ma'am, you've trained police prosecutors and judges on the POCSO, POSH, and PWD acts. So I just wanted to want to know your experience regarding that. And as you said, regarding the stakeholders to remain accountable. So after your trainings with these individuals, what is the kind of response that you have gotten, and what has been your experience so far?
So I have to say, of all my training, I love police training the most. And when I started, way back when we started our program on sexual violence and we collaborated with the Mumbai police, my first training, I remember I was terrified. Because at that time, unlike today, where you see a sizable number, at least 20-30% of women sitting in the room, at that time, there were only men. And what had happened was, after Nirbhaya, police had got so much backlash, right? So suddenly police were like ready to do some training, and law had changed. So older pot-bellied police officers, 100 sitting in a room. I'm doing my first training on the Criminal Law Amendment POCSO Act. And they are all so irritated with me. And they're like, this girl come from somewhere. What does she know? And then the first opportunity they got, they were like, Madam, what are you talking about? Do you know what will happen to this girl? It's not so easy to report. We are actually helping her by doing, whatever, telling her family, telling her not to report. And then to actually look them square in the face and tell them that, sir, you are not a social worker. If you wish to be a social worker, you should be a social worker, but you are a police officer, and section so and so in the law tells you that this is what you should do as soon as you receive information about a cognizable offense. And then, it's an humbling experience on both sides, for us to know all the issues that they go through. Because once you're really speaking at the same level, we're able to have a conversation. Till they are being arrogant, you cannot understand what is the issue. And so, firstly, you have to have the knowledge of law to be able to throw it back at them and say, hello, relax. And then you can have a conversation. And then they also are able to tell you really what are the nuances on the ground which does not allow them to do certain things, right? Also to understand that a lot of time arrogance comes from ignorance. So they don't know the law. Why they don't know the law? Because there are so many sections in the law, and women, who has taught them at that time? Training of police officers was so rare. They would do an MPA training, and then after 10 years, 20 years, like, no, nobody has told them. And even if they told them, it was never women laws, right? To be able to teach them the law, to be able to teach them the role, to give them tools of how they can use the law has really helped. Then they respect you because you have knowledge, and then they're able to share then the nuances of why, how the superiority, the hierarchy in police work. They're able to tell you what other things are at play which are not within the law but are at play. So then it's a conversation. And I learned so much from them even today. I'm able to give them tools using the Domestic Violence Act, talking about different judgments that can help them with the issues that they have brought up. And it's very powerful. I enjoy police trainings a lot. I do see a lot of change. And I'm very lucky that in Mumbai, when I do police training, which I love the most, is I can also see them in practice on the ground. So, to be able to, for me, that circle is very important, to train and then watch the accountability, which when you go outside, you can't do that much.
Thank you. Guys, anybody else who wants to? And please go ahead and unmute yourself. I guess nobody has any questions. Maybe later we'll find out. So, all right, then I guess we can conclude. Thank you so much, ma'am. We learned so much from your very rich experiences. We take back a lot of information, wealth of knowledge from your experiences, and we take them to our districts, to our environments where we are navigating very complex structures, relations, and the work on the ground. So definitely having a gender lens, which you said, is very, very integral in all our work in in the ground. So definitely thank you so much for that. I particularly liked your inputs for the role specific trainings. I think that's a very interesting kind of a approach because as you said, if you kind of have a overarching kind of a one thing fits all kind of a approach, that might miss the mark. And these are some learnings that I'm sure that our learners will take back and hopefully see what can be done on the ground. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing and giving us your time for this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to put my number into the chat box. Should I do that, or I'll share it with you?
You can
So
definitely.
we have a helpline, which we it's not a 24-hour helpline, but it's a 10 to 7 most weekdays, and we give legal counseling, legal advice in that. So anytime one has a case or one wants to just ask a question about a particular law, you can reach out, and we'd be happy to guide you.
That's great.
We'll share your email and coordinates with our learners, so there will be communication. So
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.